I'm Gary Nuttall, and I'm a technology consultant, advisor, and educator. And I deliver my training, presentations, and services to clients using tools such as Zoom. I made a lot of mistakes when I first started with Zoom, so I produced this video to share with you some good practices I've learned, which help prevent sessions from being disrupted, either by Zoom bombings or even by disruptive meeting attendees. If you find this video useful, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, share it, and give it a thumbs up, or even add a comment below. I hope to produce more helpful videos in future, so click on the notify bell too. I'm going to explain how to use Zoom and your meetings irrespective of whether you have the free or paid version, and the screenshots I'll share are using the Windows version, but the same settings work on iOS and Android devices too. Talk about some Zoom basics, and I'm going to talk about best practices in this session and how to set up your Zoom meetings for success. I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about setting up defaults, how to schedule a meeting, and how to host a meeting. And we'll go into each of those in turn. So first of all, setting up the defaults. First of all, using your web browser, go to zoom.us. And what you'll find is that you get a screen that pops up with just fairly basic details. Up at the top, it'll have this information. If you don't have an account with Zoom, then you need to create one to begin with. And then once you've created your account, you just log in with your user ID and password. That will then take you to a screen where you've got a drop. It's not a drop down, but it's just a menu thing with things like personal, profile, meetings, webinars, recordings, and settings. So we go to settings initially. And on here, we've got some of the basic settings for when you schedule meetings. So you can set whether when the video begins, whether it actually has you switched on with your camera showing or not, whether participants show or not. I tend to do it that if it's an open meeting, I have my video set on at the beginning and participants' video set on as well, because otherwise they'll forget and they get really confused. So we have it as you as video on and the participants as video on as well. Really useful stuff though, and this is where security starts becoming important straight away, is always use a personal meeting ID when scheduling a meeting. And here we have it at the moment that I've got it set up where that's off. So one of the things you need to do is to change that. So it says use personal meeting ID when scheduling a meeting, have that ticked on. So that's the first of those things. Next important thing is only allow authenticated users to join meetings from a web client. So this is a way of just reducing the risk of some malicious people connecting into your session in some way. I have it always set as well that you require a password when scheduling a meeting. The default with Zoom now is for that to be activated anyway, but it's always worth checking it. And likewise with instant meetings, if you're going to use instant meetings in some way, then have it set that requires a password as well. Then finally down in the corner, we have this thing where it says require a password for personal meeting ID. I always have that activated too. Then as you scroll down further on the initial screen, you can see that you can set it to embed the password in a meeting link. And what this means is that when you schedule the meeting, it will give you a meeting URL, like a website's address, which has got a password built into it. So your user doesn't even have to remember it or type it manually. They just click on the link and it takes them straight through with no extra effort. That makes it much easier for them, so that they tend to like that. I have it as well that you need a password if someone's joining by phone. Again, some malicious people try and dial in by phone using the fact that most people don't use this setting. And again, it just cuts down on malicious attempts and that. I tend to have it, whilst I have the user's video switched on when they join, I mute the participants on entry. And this just stops it getting really noisy as people start joining in the meeting. They've got background noises going on and all that kind of thing. So we just set it to have them muted when they come into the meeting. As you continue to scroll down on this particular menu, there is an option around chat. And what I tend to do is I have chat enabled, because that's a really useful way of getting feedback from attendees. If there's a large number of them and they want to ask questions, they can type them into the chat box and they can appear there. But I don't have it that they can actually save the chat afterwards in case anyone's mentioned anything sensitive or commercially awkward. So we don't have that. What I also do is you'll see that there's an option where it says about private chat. I have that disabled because what I don't want is if it's a large group of attendees for them to drop off into side conversations with each other using the chat facility. I prefer them to keep focused on what I'm actually talking about. When the users join or leave as well, you'll see that as an option there where it says about playing a sound when people join or leave. I have that set just to be so that I can hear it and not other people. And then as you carry on down the options that are available to you, I have file transfer switched off, as this used to be a security risk. I think it's recently been patched, in fact, whereby people could send URLs to each other via the chat facility, and that could allow them to transfer files or take control of each other's machines in some way. So that was seen as a security threat. I think that has now been patched, but I have file transfer set to off anyway. Next useful thing is to always show the chat meeting control toolbar. We're going to go into that a little bit further in a minute, but I always have that set on so I can always see it. And then carrying on further down, screen sharing. This is really important. I always have it set so that I can share my screen. So this is an example of me actually doing that now, where I'm running this meeting via Zoom for presentation, and I'm sharing a PowerPoint presentation. What you do not want to do is to have this set as all participants, because then if you have someone who's being a little bit malicious, as I've seen with some Zoom bombing recently, they will then start sharing their screen, and that might have some inappropriate content on it. So always have it who can share, host only. And then a little bit further down there, you'll see it's got disable desktop screen share for users. I don't have that activated because there are times where I might want to temporarily give someone specific access to be able to share their screen in some way. And if you have it switched on to disable the desktop screen share, it prevents them from doing that. As we carry on down the meeting basic parameters again, a little bit further down, we'll see there's an option for remote control. And what this can do is if you are screen sharing and you've handed control over to somebody else without screen sharing, they can also then start controlling others. So I have that deactivated. I just want them to be able to share their screen and nothing else. I have the non-verbal feedback switched off as well. That's just to reduce the amount of trivia that's coming in. Sometimes people do use that over getting feedback and comments. Next one is the allow remove participants to rejoin. I have the switch to off because if I've thrown somebody out of a meeting or I've thrown them out of a meeting for a good reason, I don't want them to then rejoin again. So that can be quite frustrating. And also there's an option about allowing participants to rename themselves. I actually have that switched on because there are occasions where if you've got two people in a meeting with the same name, then you can get one of them to change their name in some way, so you can still differentiate between them. The next thing is around far end camera control. I have this deactivated. I don't want other people to take control of my camera. And I guess other people don't want to take control of their camera, so I have that deactivated. Again, that's a security measure, reducing risk of people doing malicious things. As we carry on further down, we're now going into the in-meeting advanced section of the menu, and I have the waiting room activated, so I have that switched on. What that means is that people go through to a temporary holding area when they log in, and you get to choose when they can join the main meeting. So that just gives you better control. So it's kind of like a green room when you're doing a presentation in some way. That means you can park everybody up and then open the meeting when you're ready to start it, rather than having drips and drabs of people coming in. And you can customize the waiting room as well to have a useful message in some way. I also have switched on the show a join from the browser link because that allows them to download, not need to download the Zoom application, they can do it via web. And so that can be sometimes sort of really useful as a workaround when people can't actually install software locally. You get that sometimes with corporates where they've got restrictions on who can install software, and naturally enough they don't allow you to install software such as Zoom. So by doing a browser link option, that means they can actually take part in the meeting without actually installing any software, and totally browser based. So once we have all of that done, that is the settings which work as a default. Now let's take a look at when we actually schedule a meeting, what we need to set up. And to do this, we go to the initial Zoom screen, and there's the schedule icon there, which we click on that. And when that comes up, we get our window that pops up with various parameters and options and that. What I always do to begin with is I give the meeting a meaningful topic name. I've left this to the default at the moment of Gary Nuttall's Zoom meeting, but that can be so useful for people when they get a message to actually see it's something meaningful and it's relevant in some way. The next thing is, do not use your personal meeting ID, as that is just a general open room. That's almost like a room that's always available. There's no kind of security on it, and it means people can suddenly dive in. So it's a bit like having an open door where you can be having a meeting with someone and then someone else just pops in. So I have that deactivated, and I always use the generate automatically with a meeting ID, and tied in with that, I always use a password as well. And in fact, Zoom have now changed that, so that is the default setting, but it's always worth checking to make sure that's the case. Some useful learnings, again, is when you schedule a meeting, do not just blindly publish the details of the media on all forms of social media, because that just exposes it to hackers who might take a look and take an interest, and that increases the risk of you being Zoom bombed. Certainly avoid publishing it on Twitter, because you've got no control on who can see your tweet. And because Twitter is searchable, it means some hackers who are feeling a bit malicious can go and search Twitter for any comments about Zoom meeting. And if you've included the credentials of how to connect to that, then you just start asking for trouble. The other thing is, just in case it hasn't come through on the defaults that you've now set up, is always make sure that enable meeting room is set and mute participants on entry. Remember what I say, my suggestion is that you have your video activated, the user's video activated, but the microphone muted so that it doesn't generate a lot of noise when they join. The other thing as well is when you actually create these details, sometimes if you're creating multiple meetings, and this is again a lesson learned from bitter experience, don't forget to send the right meeting details to the right people. I've had occasions where I've sent the wrong meeting details to somebody and they've tried to click to join my meeting, and all they get is a message to say that I'm busy in another meeting. So once you've done all of those things, you click on schedule, and that will take you to a screen similar to this where it's got your details. I have this set up to integrate automatically with my Google Calendar. So this is a Google Calendar meeting invite, and it has the URL, which I've blanked out on this, but you can use that URL and you can either put that into a message through WhatsApp or Telegram, or you can email it, or you can do whatever, and it's got all those details automatically for you, which is great because the user, when they want to join the meeting, they just click on the link. Really easy to use. So now we've scheduled the meeting, now we're going to host the meeting. And here we are, this initial screen we set up, and at the bottom of the screen we've got our toolbar, which we're just going to explore a little bit further for a moment. And this is what the toolbar looks like usually at the bottom of the screen. And what we have is, if you click on the security button, it gives you this drop down or drop up, and this gives you the ability to lock the meeting. And this can be really, really useful because once you've opened the meeting, if it's just for a fixed number of people, once everyone is in the meeting, you should lock the meeting. That then prevents any further people from joining, even if they do have the correct credentials. So it's just a way of closing it and saying, sorry, the door's closed now, we're full. Make sure enable waiting room is enabled, and I've got chat enabled here as well. And as I mentioned before about allowing people to rename themselves, you'll notice it doesn't have allow participants to share screen, so that shows that one of the settings I showed you earlier on has been correctly activated, so that's good. The next thing that we have is on managing participants, and what will happen is if you click on that, usually another menu will appear on the right hand side of the screen, and it gives you a list of the current participants who are in the meeting, what once the meeting's actually running, and you have the ability to individually mute them, to individually unmute them, to turn on their video, to turn off the video, and so on. Or there's an option which is to mute all or unmute all. So when you're having a point at which you want to make an announcement to the group, that's where you can mute all and stop everyone else from talking. And then when you want to open it up to the floor again, you can click on the unmute all, and that activates everyone's microphones. You'll notice there's 3 little dots just on the right hand side, and when you click on that, this final drop down appears, and this is where again it kind of repeats some of the other settings we've seen before about locking the meeting and enabling the waiting room. That's useful to sometimes check as well. Finally, on this as well, do remember, don't let participants unmute themselves, because otherwise you get people who are determined that they want to interrupt in some way. So I have that deactivated. Do enable waiting rooms that allows people to park up, and do lock the meeting. And then over on the sharing screen options, you remember that I have this set so that only I can share, which is really good. So I've got it confirmed here, who can share, only the host, and that just stops anyone else from sharing their screen, which may have malicious content or something disruptive in some way. So that's it, really simple, fairly quick walkthrough. I hope that you found this useful. Thank you for your time and attention. As I mentioned before, I'm Gary Nuttall, so please subscribe, like, comment, set notified to my YouTube channel, the details which are there, or get in touch. You can email me at gnuttall@distalytics.com, or you can tweet me at gpn01. So with that, I wish you well, and I hope you find that useful. Have a good day.